Rachel.
And I'm Hannah.
Welcome to the RAD Rapport, a podcast born out of the nonprofit Ride at Dawn.
In the coming episodes, you will hear real life truths from victims and professionals who have incredible stories of overcoming abuse, finding healing, and building a better industry for our kids in it.
These stories will not be easy to hear. They are even harder to live through. Please use discretion and your own judgment on if you are in a place to listen and absorb these stories.
Our goal for this podcast is to give our guests the stand and a chance to tell their story the way that they want to, uninterrupted and unscripted.
Glad you're here. Please let us know what you think of this episode and comment the questions you want us to ask our guest on the follow-up episode.
Enjoy.
My name's Morgan Taylor now. I used to be Morgan Tedder, which is what most people know me by. I break colts and train barrel horses. I've got 4 kids and a wonderful husband, and never went to college. um, I'm pretty cut and dry. There's not much really to me. I'm a pretty open book. There's not really anything I'm like uncomfortable talking about, but I am like the most emotional person in the world, so I'm probably gonna cry at some point, but just ignore me.
I'm a total crier. Don't worry. I think as far as details go, we want you to be comfortable in what you talk about. So there's been people who have given us minimal details, and then there have been some that have given us pretty graphic details. It's completely up to you and what you feel comfortable with. We don't want to ever push you one way or another, and you can
Right.
just kind of take that and go off your comfort scale.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, none of it really like bothers me to talk about, but it like there's definitely still some pain there, even though it happened like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And I told you I was gonna cry, and I'm already there.
It's all right. You're in a safe place. I cried the whole time I did my episode. Don't even worry about it. You just wept too.
Yeah, I'm a waterworks through and through. I grew up homeschooled. And really all I wanted to do with my life was horses. I'd do my school at like 2 a.m. and then I'd go to like a full-time job, worked for a cut and horse trainer. And from then I would earn my money to rodeo and do all the things because I didn't raise up with a family like that had all the money. I also swear that I cry out of anxiety more than I am like about actually being emotional.
I cry when I'm mad, when I'm sad. I'm a D all the above cry. Yeah, same. You're in a safe place here.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up homeschooled and because really all I wanted to do with my life was rodeo and train horses but I couldn't necessarily afford to do all the things that a lot of these kids could that were like in the rodeo scene, and so if I wanted it, I had to work for it. Like, I don't think I've ever bought a horse over like $500, and most of my horses are rescues that I had to go through like the blood, sweat, and tears in order to make them what they are. But I mean, I guess I should be thankful for it because now I break colts and I made a business out of it, so it worked out. But I worked a full-time job when I was in high school in order to pay for the horse stuff that I wanted to do, and now we're here, and I had a kid way too young, and I got married when I was like 19 and had my son, and I'm almost 29 now, and when I had my son, I figured out my ex-husband was cheating on me, and so I left him and moved to and I moved to Stephenville, and that was the last place I needed to be when I was freshly divorced. And then I ended up coming back to like the Fort Worth area for a little bit, back to Decatur because I'm originally from around the Decatur area, and I came back there for a while, and then I met my husband, I guess almost 5 years ago now. We met at a Christmas party. I insulted him because I was really, really over men. And then I insulted him the entire night, and we ended up doing daily phone calls, and he asked me on a date, and I said I'd only go if I could bring my dog. So we went we went and watched live music, and he bought my dog Whataburger, and then he called me the next day, and he's like, "I'm gonna take you to lunch tomorrow," and I was like, "Okay." When he came and took me to lunch, he was really, really sweet, and I was like, "There's no way this turns into anything serious." And he was like, "Well, do you want to hang out after work?" I was like, "Well, I've got a video sale horses," and he came and videoed sale horses for me, and then we spent the weekend together, and I moved in. Like, it was over after that. But yeah, that's pretty much the rundown as far as like how we got here, minus I think it was probably fall of 2018 is when everything like started with him. And where it actually like got really bad was in Oklahoma, conveniently.
Sorry about that.
We met at a bar and we actually met at PR's I say met. We re-met. We knew each other through like just rodeo in general, like knew each other through high school rodeo. I just hadn't seen him in like a really long time and didn't really know what happened to him, like fell off the face of the earth type of person. And I saw him again at a bar. We realized who we were and then like kind of reconnected right there. And from there we kind of started dating like almost immediately. Looking back, I was like, girl, that was a red flag. Like how fast he came on to me because it almost seemed like kind of forced. And it was very like typical narcissism, like very love bombing, like just in hindsight, I just was like, why did nobody say anything to me? But yeah, we met at PR's, like reconnected at PR's. And then we kind of started to kind of date from there and everything was going pretty decent. There was a couple things like looking back now that kind of like bugged me, like, but nothing that I was like, this is a deal breaker for me. And like, I always just thought, relationships come with their trials. So like, I just need to like stick it out and like, it'll get better over time. And then it really honestly probably got bad when the first like big red flag was at that rodeo in Durant. Or should I say after the rodeo in Durant? I think it was Durant. I'm probably very wrong. I just know it was around that area, but yeah, he asked me to meet up at this like little pool hall type thing. And it was like next to a hotel and I couldn't get there until after the rodeo was over. And so he was like, hey, me and all of my like traveling rodeo buddies were all gonna be at this bar, pool hall type deal. He was like, meet us there afterwards, after you get off work. And I was like, okay, sure. And so I do. I drive out there after I get off work. And as soon as I walk in, like I should have walked right back out and left and like never spoke to him again. But I walked in and he was like kissing another girl. And I was like, what did I just walk into? And he like ran up to me as soon as he saw me and was like, no, you don't understand. Like, we're doing this and like acting like we're married to get free drinks. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But then he somehow convinced me that it made sense. And so, like, I stayed at the bar and, like, hung out for a minute. But then I eventually, like, I started getting just a weird vibe from him and the girl that he was kissing who was married, which was also wild. Yeah, I was like, this is so messed up and I am not ready to be in a Jersey Shore episode. But throughout the night, like I really started to just not like the way that this girl and the guy I was dating, I didn't like the way that they were interacting while I was still there. Cause I was like, your pretend little marriage was cool for a minute, but I'm here now and I feel disrespected. And I should have stood my ground, but I didn't. I kind of backed off because I was like, I really like this guy. I wanted it to work out. And I have well, not including my current husband, but before that I had awful taste in men. And so I was like, one of them's got to work out. And so, yeah, I backed down and I really shouldn't have. Looking back, I was like, you idiot.
You were young though, and I know 21, 22 seems you're an adult, yes, but your life experience is pretty small, and
Yeah.
you don't realize that no, there is better out there that you can get. It's just hard to find, but you can actually get it. Well, and I think that a big thing that people in the horse industries is the moment you get out and you're 18 or out of college, they really pressure you to get married and to have that pressure of like, okay, something's got to give or something's got to work, and
Yeah.
how the stereotype of how men and women can behave in the horse world is very normalized in relationships for the healthy and unhealthy parts of it. But anyway, so don't
It
beat
really
yourself up
is.
for that because your frontal lobe wasn't even developed yet, girl.
I think I felt like I had slim pickings as far as like who would be willing to date me because I already had a son. And so I was like, I'm this 21-year-old and I've already got like an almost 3-year-old. Like, there's no way people are gonna want to be with that because like at this point I was like, I'm damaged goods. My mindset was like, my self-esteem was like below the floor.
They prey on that.
Don't they? But yeah, I eventually had gotten to the point where I was just mad, not even at something else that had happened, I was just mad at the whole interaction, and I just couldn't get out of my mind that I'd walked in and seen my new boyfriend kissing another girl, like, immediately right after we start dating, and so I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna leave, like, y'all have a good night." And so I walk out, and I will start walking back to my truck, and I can't remember if my truck was, like, in front of this bar, but somehow my truck ended up, like, at the back of that bar, like, in between there was, like, a bar and then, like, some storage buildings right here. There's a little road right here that went to a hotel back here. And I was in between the storage buildings and the bar. And somehow we're, like, back there. I can't remember if I was already back there or if I had moved back there, but either way. And he's just sitting there trying to convince me that what he was doing wasn't cheating. And then somehow he completely turns the conversation into I was cheating and that's why I didn't show up to the rodeo on time. And so then he like goes through my phone, doesn't find anything. And then he starts telling me, admit that you cheated on me. And I was like, no, because I didn't. Like, what do you like? At this point, I'm confused because I don't know where this conversation's going. Because I'm like, how did we go from you kissing another girl to you saying you cheated it on me and trying to get me to admit to something that I didn't do? And then at that point, he just starts over and over again, like being like, you cheated on me, admit to it. And I was like, no, I'm like, you're nuts. And so at this point, I try to go leave, and he grabs me by my throat and he picks me up, like up against my truck. And I'm like off the ground, like I'm choking at this point. And in my head, I'm like, this is where I die. I'm like, I'm the next like Dateline episode. And like, at that point, I couldn't decide, like, do I say, yes, I cheated on you and he'll put me down and like at least my life is going to be spared, or like is he going to kill me because I admitted to it? But I was like, no, I'm not going to lie. And so I just kept saying no, and in an attempt to get me to admit to everything that I didn't do, he like drags me, he like dragged me by my throat like over to a curb that was like on the other side of my truck, and he laid me down and he put my like my face up against the curb, and he made me bite the curb, and then he like shoved my face into it. He didn't like hit me into it, but like he shoved me enough that like I had bruising, and then he like went into detail about how he was gonna kill me, and like he'd spread my body and like to different places, and my parents will never find me, and nobody will ever figure out it was him that did it. And at that point, I just sat there silently because I like accepted at that point that I was dying that night. And so I was like, yeah, this is the end. Like, I'm just gonna be quiet. I'm gonna let it happen, and then just hope by the grace of God, like I live. Or like he knocks me unconscious and leaves me for dead, and I wake up and I'll be okay. And I don't remember exactly how everything ended. I'm pretty sure one of his friends from the rodeo drove up at that point because they were staying at the hotel that was behind that bar. And I think that's what got him to stop, because at this point, like, my face was bruised and my throat hurt. Like, I lost my voice because he choked me. And I ended up driving home with him in my truck back to Texas, and somehow I had convinced myself that everything was okay. And then at that point, he had convinced me that I had done something wrong and that I needed to work to gain his forgiveness. And I think that's like the start of where he established like the control over me, because from there it just like steadily got worse, and like we ended up moving like out to like the Georgetown area, like down towards like Austin, San Antonio. I can't remember if Georgetown is close to Austin or San Antonio, but it was in the Georgetown area. And we came down to Fort Worth every weekend to rodeo. And at one point, he had convinced me that I wasn't good enough for us to keep spending the money on my entry fees, and that we just needed to focus on his saddle bronc riding, because that was where we were going to get the money to live at, was through his rodeoing. And so I had eventually like left all my horses with my mom. I had quit rodeoing for the most part. I wasn't allowed to like go hang out with my friends by myself. Just like the typical like narcissistic, like isolate you from everybody type of deal. And there wasn't a ton of physical abuse until like probably about a month, maybe 2 months later. The biggest thing was the people at his job where he worked, because he used to make me, right after I got off of work, I had to come straight to his work and wait for him to get off of work, like wait at the, oh gosh, I don't even know what we should call it, like the building where he worked at, because he was a lineman. And so I had to go to his job and and like wait for him to get off, and I had to like prove that like when I got there and that I stayed there the whole time and that I didn't talk to anybody, I didn't text anybody, I wasn't on the phone with anybody. And I had to prove that like every day that like I wasn't doing anything suspicious. And even then there was days where like there was one day that I was stuck in a lot of traffic and then I got pulled over and got a ticket, and I remember having like this absolute meltdown with the officer that pulled me over because I was like, "No, I'm late to pick up my boyfriend." And this officer is like, "What is wrong with you, lady? Like I'm just giving you a speeding ticket. Like it's not the end of the world." And I was like, "No, you don't understand. Like my boyfriend's gonna be really mad that I'm late." And I think the officer was the only person that like showed any sort of like concern for my well-being. Like I remember he gave me this like little spiel of like, if he's like that, then you don't need to be with him, from a random stranger. And that should have been like my sign, but I didn't listen because all I was worried about was getting to his work on time. So yeah, it went on like that, and not long before we had gotten together, I had gotten my nose pierced and my belly button pierced, and he had complained about the fact that my belly button piercing made me look like a whore, and I was like, "Well, I don't really like wear anything that shows my stomach anyway, so like it's not anything to be worried about." And that was like the next part of abuse that I remember right after the hotel bar curb incident. Was we were staying in like a RV park because we had a camper. We got a camper like not long after we got together. And it was not far from where his job was. And we had gotten to the point where I had quit my job and I stayed at the camper all day, and he would lock me inside the camper to where I couldn't leave. And there was some days that he took my phone so that I had to stay there, but I also couldn't talk to anybody. And all I had was our two dogs. I had caught him talking to other girls. I just had a feeling, and so like middle of the night, I went through his phone and I found messages with this girl, and I tried to get up in the middle of the night and leave because I didn't think that I could do it during the day while he was awake. Well, he wakes up, of course, because I can't be quiet to save my life. And I was like, "I found the messages on your phone. I'm not doing this." And so I try to leave, and he basically like forces me to stay at least until the morning. And after I had gone to sleep that night, he ripped my belly button ring out, and I have like a scar on my stomach where he ripped my belly button ring out. There's like an infant ring out. Which I guess is probably the best way he could have done it because it wasn't, I guess, as painful as it sounds. But I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I swear I have like a huge scar now from it. I'll never get my belly button pierced again because just getting it pierced in the first place, like I about passed out. So that's never happening again, but it'll be all right.
Mhm.
I don't really miss it. I was going through a crisis when I got those piercings anyway, so
We've all been there, right?
I was like post-divorce, like it was a time for me, and I was too scared to get a tattoo, so I was like, I'm gonna get two piercings at once.
I love it.
It was great. Yeah, but I don't think I'd really quite realize, like I remember waking up from the pain, but I remember kind of going back to sleep pretty quickly after. Like I didn't confront him about what he did. I almost was in like I felt, you know how you feel like when you're under anesthesia and like you're kind of coming to, but you're not quite like awake yet, and then like you kind of go back out for a little bit. That's how I felt, because like the memory is so vague. That or my body is like trauma responding, like not letting me remember anything. And so I remember waking up like the next morning, and for some reason I had woke up the next morning and everything was just fine. Like we went about daily life as usual. He went to work. I was locked in the camper. I did have my phone that day though, so like I was able to or no, he didn't lock me in the camper this day because I remember I took the dogs for a walk, and it was one of the first times that he was like allowing me to like at least just take the dogs for a walk, but I had to stay at the RV park. Um, and so like I had to stay at the park, but I could at least go outside and like play with the dog, and that was like my only little like out getaway where I got to like kind of be normal for a little bit. I almost feel like that girl in that crime episode, she like got locked in a box and her captor like eventually started letting her like clean the house and like go outside. And looking back, I'm like, that was the same situation.
No, it's same characters, different fonts. Like, if you wouldn't have said, sorry to interrupt, but if you
Oh
wouldn't
no,
have
you're
said
fine.
your ex was a lineman and a bronc rider, I'd asked if it was the same man I dated because it's crazy. They use the same playbooks though. They really do.
Yeah.
It's like they all go to Walmart and they're like, okay, same book, and it's always sold out. Like that.
Abusing for
Yeah,
dummies.
yeah, that is
Yep.
seriously what it is.
It's messed
Yeah,
up.
well, and I eventually at one point I had to go to like a once I got out of the relationship, I had to go to a class to learn about narcissism and abusive relationships, and I like just every single like point that they went through, I was like, "Yep, that's him. Yep, that's him. Yep, that's him." And I got to the end of it and I was like, I don't know how I didn't see this before, like how I didn't notice I was being abused. Because at some point, I was past the like, I'm being abused, and I at some point thought that I deserved everything I was getting.
But that didn't come by accident. That came because he spent all his time every day manufacturing that in you. That
Yeah,
wasn't something you did or didn't do. That was his full-time job.
yeah. No, he spent more time creating a bubble of control over me than he did working at his job or trying to further his rodeo career. Like he could have put his energy into other things, but his only focus was controlling me. And I had gotten to the point where he had basically brainwashed me into thinking like this is normal and I'm okay. I just need to learn how to be better. And every weekend we would go down to Fort Worth, and he would ride broncs and at the stockyards, and I literally was like a slave. I mean, I brought all of his gear in. I saddled his broncs for him, got the halters on, figured out like how far down his rein he needed to hold his horse. Like it looking back now, I'm like I just know how these other people looked at me, and they were like, "Oh, you poor soul." Because I just looking back, I was like, "Holy crap, I was so whipped." And just brainwashed to the fact that I was under that much control because he could tell me jump and I'd be like, "How high?" "Yes, sir." And there was even points of abuse that I don't remember, and there's also points of abuse that he did it in my sleep and I'd just wake up with bruises. And so like not all of the abuse is still like clear in my head because sometimes I would wake up with a random bruise or like fingerprints on me and I don't know how they got there. Like I just know it happened sometime in my sleep. Which thinking back, I'm like, how did I not wake up? But I guess my body was like, no, 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 stay asleep. It's better if you stay asleep. But people would all the time be like, what are those marks on your neck? And I'd be like, I was saddling his bronc in the chute and it came up and like whacked me. And like I hit the rail or like whatever. Like I would just always come up with something and it became like a second nature for me to be like, oh no, this happened. And at some point I quit knowing that I was lying and I was like, it almost became like a muscle memory, like involuntary response for me to be like, no, that's not what happened. Like this happened. Or like, I don't know where I got that. And they'd be like, well, is it him? And I'd be like, absolutely not. Are you out of your mind? I was like, he would never. And at some point, I actually believed that he would never do that, even though I knew that he hurt me all the time, which is weird to say now. But like, I completely like was oblivious to the reality of what I was going through, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, then create a different reality for you to
Yeah.
live in. They have to completely alter your sense of reality. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
would know that what they're doing is wrong. You weren't oblivious, you were brainwashed,
Yeah.
you were manipulated.
Because the human brain doesn't wake up and say, hey, I'm going to feel negative about myself. I'm going to beat myself down. Those thoughts get put into your head on purpose, which then triggers that reality and that's truly what you think. I mean, you didn't know any better.
Right. Yeah, no. It's just weird like looking back because even when people would flat out ask me if I was getting abused, I would say no because I truly believed I wasn't. Even though like I was also deathly afraid of him. It was a very odd time like thinking back. I'm like, how? But once I learned, about like how much brainwashing I was actually involved in, I guess, like, I was like, well, no wonder, like, all these people that are abused don't know they're being abused on a surface level because we truly don't believe we're being abused. That sounds really weird to say out loud. Like, I'm trying to process.
Uh, It won't for anybody that's ever been through it. It sucks, but our brain, part of it's a trauma response, your brain trying to normalize or minimize what's happening, but a lot of it is usually that abuser saying, here, this is what it really is.
Yeah, and well, my poor husband, he still has to deal with it because, like, he'll move too fast towards me, and I'm, like, flinching, like, ducking for cover, and he's like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, it's not you, like, I'm not actually afraid of you, like, that's just a natural response, and I don't think it'll ever go away."
No, it's a life sentence
Yeah.
for a lot of victims, unfortunately. Abusers get a slap on the wrist or no consequences, and the rest of
Yeah.
us live with their horrible choices every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's just a trail that they leave behind them. It's a trail of women. There's children involved sometimes. Like, it's an awful cycle that just keeps repeating, and it's sad. I don't know if you wanted me to, like, keep going from there.
If you want to keep going from there, we want to listen. If you want to pivot, we want to pivot. It's completely up to you.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine. I'm not, like, having a breakdown, so we're good. We're doing good. I've
Right,
tried
you're
less than
great.
I thought I would. Um, so I guess from there it was just and I don't even remember all of, like, the little forms of abuse. I still have pictures in my camera roll of, like, bruises and stuff on me, and I'm like, I don't even remember what happened that day, like, or why I took that picture. Which if he ever did find that I took a picture of some of the bruises he gave me, I would get in really big trouble for that, and that would be a whole 'nother deal. I guess, like, the next thing that really stood out to me that I vividly remember is we went out to like the Mahia area. I think they technically live in Fairfield. This family that he calls like part of his second family. They have like a ranch out there. Really sweet family. I'm actually still friends with them. They are some of the sweetest people ever. And I'm glad that they kind of stuck with me whenever I split from him because when I first split from him, like I didn't really have a whole lot of friends or like he had isolated me for so long. Like I was pretty dang alone. We went out to their place for the weekend. And honestly, it was probably the most fun weekend I'd had when I was with him. We went to the oldest daughter's graduation, her high school graduation, and that was super fun. And then after that, we like spent the weekend at their place and we like rode their whole ranch on horses and played tag on horses. We all almost got bucked off. It was so much fun though. But that weekend was really honestly like I have no complaints until we were on our way back. And it's a couple hour drive to get back home from the Fairfield area. And on the way home, somehow we had like gotten into this argument. Um, he had took my phone, and this will now be the second phone that he is about to break of mine. And he slams it on the dash of my truck, breaks it, and throws it out the window. While we're going down the highway. And he had my location to my phone. And so I eventually like convinced him to turn back around and find my phone on the side of the highway. And we find it and it's like completely crushed. I actually still have the phone. I don't know why, but I still have the phone and it's in my junk drawer in my kitchen, still completely crushed like it was the day that he slammed it against my dash. And he refused to help me get a new one. And so I had to use the crushed screen, which he liked even better because I could barely use my phone. So that I couldn't cheat on him or call anybody. Somebody had seen us arguing. He broke the door on my truck. That was the first time he broke one of the doors on my truck. He broke several of the doors on my truck, but that was the first door that he ever broke. And he had came around to my side of the truck and like drugged me out of the truck. Somebody had seen this on the highway and called the police. The police came up and were like, "Are you okay? Like, is he abusing you? What's going on? Do we need to let you drive home by yourself? And like, he needs to call somebody to come get him. And like, they tried to convince me that this is the plan that needed to happen, but they were forming it as a question. But they asked so many times, like, looking back, I was like, they were trying to get us to like go our separate ways so that I could get away. And I 100% just kept denying it. And I was like, no, 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 we're fine. Everything's fine. We had a small argument, but it's good. Everything's fine. And so we eventually get back in the truck. And of course, the whole thing is my fault. It's my fault that the police got called. I caused a scene. So therefore, I'm like, I now have to like work for his favor again. And then like just the pattern like continues until about the time that I finally get the guts to break things off. Which was, it was about the time, it was like, yeah, it was when we were in Georgetown. Because Georgetown was the last place that we lived before the first breakup. And it had gotten to the point, we had gotten in an argument when we lived in Georgetown. This argument had gotten to the point that he threw me on the ground and he like pinned me onto the ground. And he was choking me to the point that I was losing consciousness. And then at some point, my dog, she had came out from under the couch in the camper that we lived in, and she bit him like right in the throat, and that was the only thing that got him off of me. And as soon as he got off of me, I mean, I ran outside and I went to the owner of the RV park, and she didn't believe me.
Oh my God.
And I was like, can I borrow your phone? I want to call the cops. Like, I'm scared. And she literally treated me like a nuisance. And she believed his story over mine. Even though I like came to her, and like at this point I basically looked like I was on drugs because I was so skinny. Because on top of the abuse, like we like if it was a choice of like him eating or me eating to stay alive, like it was him. So like I was severely malnourished. I think I weighed like 108 pounds. And then at some point not long after that, I weighed like 97. Like I got really, really skinny. And like, and my husband was coming to check on me. He was pretty nervous about me doing this whole deal. I think he was more nervous about it than I was, because if I could shout to the rooftops, like, do not date this man, I totally would. But yeah, the owner of the RV park, she like did not believe me, but she let me have her phone anyway so I could call the cops. She basically wanted me to leave and wanted him to stay, because she was talking to him and she was like, no, 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 you're okay, but she needs to quit her drama. And I was like, you're joking, right? I'm like, I came to you like crying. I obviously look like malnourished. There's still marks on my neck from where he had just choked me out. I'm pretty sure my eyes were like bloodshot. And I don't know if she just thought I was like on drugs or something and like having an episode and like tripped out of my mind or something like that, but she definitely like was just like, get this crazy bitch out of here. And so the cops get there, and even the cops don't really seem like they believe me, but the cops do finally, I get a woman cop, because the two guy cops that show up, like, they don't believe me. They like, I can obviously tell that they don't give a rat's ass about what I'm talking about. Well, then there's a female cop that shows up. She believes me, and they take him to jail. He gets one of his bull riding friends, because on and off he rode bulls a little bit too. And he gets one of his bull riding friends to bail him out of jail. At this point, I think I had called my mom or someone to like help give me gas money to get home. I don't remember where exactly I went. I think I went to one of my friends' houses because I was like, I cannot go to my parents' house. And so at this point I've like left and I'm back down in like the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he gets out of jail and immediately tries to contact me again. But I've blocked his number at this point, and I'm like trying to like get away. And his bull riding friend calls me and he's like, he really loves you, and it's like really crappy of you to treat him like this. And I remember being like, am I in like a Twilight Zone episode? Like, what? I'm like, this isn't love. And then, of course, I don't remember how, but he eventually, like, sees me in person, convinces me to stay at this house that he was staying at with this girl that is an older lady that I say older. She was older to me at the time. Looking back now, she was probably like in her mid-30s. But as a young 22-year-old, I was like, yeah, she's like older. But he was staying at her house, and it was with the same friend group from the whole thing that happened in Durant. It was like that whole friend group, that whole like traveling group. Like they all traveled together to rodeos, and it was that same group from the bar, and he was staying at this lady's house, and so we end up like kind of staying there for a little while. And at that point is when I really started to like push back and not really let him treat me how he had been treating me the whole 2 years we had been together. And I was like, I just really started to push back, and that's when the abuse got worse, obviously. Because he did not like the fact that I was not like bowing down to him anymore. It got to the point like I threw a glass coffee mug at his face. I was ready to like die, but die fighting. I was done, and at this point I didn't care. So at that point everybody thought I was crazy, but I didn't care if everybody thought I was crazy, because I was going crazy. I'd been gaslit to the point that I didn't know what was the truth and what wasn't. It was just the same thing over and over again. Like, you're cheating on me, or you don't really love me because of XYZ. Like, you don't support my rodeo dreams, like, whatever it was. Like, I was always in trouble for something. And then at that point, that's when the abuse went from like just the typical like hitting, choking, throwing me on the ground. Like, it went from that. The abuse started to get like more sexual, and it went from like, I'm just going to hit you or choke you, to now you're going to go through consistent sessions of like rape. And I don't know why, but this is like the one part of my story that like it probably should bother me to talk about, but it is like the least bothersome part of talking about everything. This part like bothers me the least, but it probably should bother me the worst. And I don't know if that's like my trauma or I don't know. But then it was like consistent. I want to say it happened like at least once or twice a day. Well, then I finally left again. And I was like, I'm done. And looking back now, I know it was rape, but in the moment, I didn't really think of it as that, because I was like, it can't be rape if we're in a relationship. Like, that's not how that works. But it definitely was, because I didn't consent and I didn't want it to happen, yet I was forced to do it anyway. And so I left, and I was away from him for like a good month or so. Then I was really trying to like get on with my life. But at the same time, I was brainwashed to the point that like I didn't know how to live without him, even though he did nothing for me. Like, I felt like I just didn't know how to live. And so like it was rough, but I was like, surely I'll get over it, and everything will be fine. Well, then I find out I'm pregnant, and I was like, well, I don't want another kid with the dad that I'm not with. And so, like an idiot, I tell him I'm pregnant, and he doesn't believe. Like, he believes I'm pregnant. We were separated for probably about a month or so, and I found out I was pregnant. And so I was like, I've got to call and tell him, because in my mind I was like, that was the right thing to do, was tell him that he's about to have a child. And so I call him, and I'm like, I want you to know that I'm pregnant, and whatever you want to do, like, is whatever you want to do. Well, he makes me drive all the way out to the Joshua Cleburne area, back to that lady's house, and was like, I need to see the pregnancy test for myself. And so he makes me go to a Dollar General, pick up a pregnancy test, and we pull over. It is like the middle of the night. He makes me pull over in the middle of the night on some back road and pee on a stick on the side of the road, because he doesn't believe me. And I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure he videoed it, because he like was like collecting evidence to make sure it was his baby. I don't know where that like fit into his train of thought, but somehow it did, and it made sense to him. And I guess went with it. And so it comes up positive, obviously, and he's like, I'm going to be the best father ever, blah, blah, blah. Well, then we go back into like a love bombing stage, and he's all like, gushy, like we start going to church together, like, and I'm thinking like maybe this time things will turn out okay and like he'll start being normal and we can have a real relationship. And it did not last very long. It lasted about a month and then things started to get rough and rocky, and we moved into a house in Justin. We rented out like half of this house, and then my friend owned the other part. And we were able to have a couple of horses, and like I still wasn't allowed to like rodeo, but we had gotten like 5 horses from like this lady that was like basically like having a clean out sale. We paid like $500 for like all these horses, and most of them were broke. And so, like, I at least had a couple of horses that I could go outside and ride, because that was at least like some little bit of joy that I could have in my life, even if it was just in the pasture. And so life for the most part is kind of a version of normal, like probably one of the most normal points of our relationship. And then he goes and gets a job. And so he's gone most of the day for this job. And I think I have the most trauma about being locked in a room from that house, because he would lock me in the bedroom of that house to where I couldn't leave all day. Like I didn't have food, I didn't have water. I had a tiny little like it was like a tiny little TV with like a DVD player in the bottom of it, and I had 2 movies that I could watch. And I won't watch those movies to this day. And they were like kid movies, but I literally won't watch them because like I watched them over and over again just so I had some sort of noise throughout the day, and it sucked. And there's also foods that I won't eat to this day because every once in a while he would lock me in a room with like a bag of granola or like something like that to like get me through the day while he was at work. Turns out he wasn't at work. He was seeing another girl. He was at work partially, but not the whole time. And I start kind of catching on to this. And so of course there starts being like a lot more pushback from me again. And I'm like pregnant and he's cheating on me again. And I don't even know how many times he cheated on me. There's only a few that I actually know about. And so I find out and I'm starting to like just argue with him a whole lot more. Well, then of course the actual physical abuse starts back up again because I'm pushing back. Where it got
While you're pregnant?
we had gotten an argument about something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty late at night, and he had like pushed me. We had like this big tall porch. I want to say it was probably like 4-ish feet off the ground. We had gotten in an argument. The argument went outside. And he had basically like shoved me off the porch and I hit the ground. And after I hit the ground, like I didn't have my phone or anything, but I just like took off running and I ran down the driveway, and it's like down this county road. And as I'm running down this road, it's pitch dark. And at one point I'm running and I didn't realize there was like a creek right in front of me, and I fell into that creek like at I was sprinting and I fell into this creek. And I remember I laid there for probably an hour or so because I was like, where do I go from here? And so I eventually, like, I'm laying there and I'm like, I'm wet and I'm probably like covered in bruises from head to toe because I just fell in this creek. And then after that, I finally eventually like come back to the house. And then the next day, like the argument is still just, it just kept going. Like I said, I really don't remember what we were arguing about, but it was intense, whatever it was. And it got to the point where my son was with us that day at the house, and it had gotten to the point where he wouldn't let me have my son. And when he wouldn't let me have my son, I noticed like in my peripheral vision that my phone was sitting on a table, and I was going to be able to get out the door. So when he wouldn't let me have my son, I grabbed my phone and I try to run outside, and he tries to like grab my phone. And in an effort to grab my phone and take my phone from me, he throws me down the stairs on our porch. And I don't know why he didn't like come back down after me. He just like threw me off the stairs and then like left me. And then when I kind of like came back to, because I think it knocked me out for a slight minute because there's like a blank space of memory that I don't remember. But I remember eventually, like, getting back up, and I still had my phone, and I remember being shocked that I still had my phone after being thrown off the stairs, and then he, like, grabs my son, and he's got my son in his arms, and because he wouldn't let me have my son back, I called 911, and I, like, kind of walked down the driveway where he couldn't get to me while I tried to call 911, but I also could still see my son. And so I call the cops, and I'm begging them for help. The dispatcher is clearly annoyed with me. She thinks I'm nuts, and I'm like, great, and a pair of cops that doesn't believe me. And so the cops, they get to the house, and at some point, whenever I had called the cops and they were on the way, he went into the kitchen and took a cast iron pot and hit himself, like, right in the forehead, to where there was a mark on him. And when the cops got there, they told the cops that I did it. And I was covered in bruises from head to toe. I think at the time I had a black eye. And I was covered in bruises. And he had one mark on his forehead that he caused himself. And the cops told us to stay apart for the day. And I just, like, stayed outside that whole day. Cause, like, I didn't even really know where I was gonna go from there. I didn't really think I had anywhere to go. And so the next day, I had just taken a shower, and we get a knock at the door, and he goes and answers the door, and it's the cops. And they had put a warrant out for my arrest. And the cops, and I was still in a towel, and they were like, "You've got to throw on clothes in, like, less than 60 seconds, and we're taking you to the jail." And at this whole time, I'm like, at this point, I don't know about him hitting himself with the pot. Like, I still don't know about this or the story he told the cops. And they take me to jail, and they do my mugshot and everything, and they read my charges to me as battery and assault. And I was like, no. And these cops, like, the whole time they think I'm crazy. The one cop was, like, really, really rude to me, and, like, I had blisters on my wrists from the handcuffs. Like, he was rough with me. And I didn't resist anything, but for some reason he was still rough with me, and I have so many marks. I had so many marks from that. And it was to the point that they didn't believe that I was pregnant, and so I had to take another pregnancy test in front of, like, 3 cops. They all, like, went into the bathroom with me, left the door open to where, like, the holding area where they keep everybody they've just arrested. They left the door open so those people can see me, and there's 3 cops in the doorway, and they're making me pee on a stick. It was absolutely humiliating. And I had gotten to the point that I was like, if I'm in jail for something I didn't do, like, I'm not eating. I like nothing. So I literally I didn't eat. I was there for 3 days, and they offered me meals, and I didn't eat. I wouldn't drink. Like, and they kept being like, you can't just like not eat. And I was like, watch me. I was like, I didn't do this. And they were like, yeah, that's what everybody says. And I was like, I didn't do this. I'm like, I am the one covered in bruises. And I was like, so please explain to me, like, where my charges came from. Well, I get bailed out, and I don't know who has bailed me out. And I walk outside, and he is the one that bailed me out. And I don't know why, but I allowed it, and we went home. And at some point, like, I think it was like a week, maybe 2 weeks later, um, he had beat on me again. I don't remember exactly what happened. I don't know if it was so bad that, like, I just don't remember. I feel like there's a lot of the abuse that I really don't clearly remember. But at some point within those next 2 weeks, he had beat on me to the point that I needed to go to the hospital. And this wasn't the first time that I had gone to the hospital. I remember going to the hospital 3 times. One of them was for him beating me. The other one, he had beat on me, but, like, not to the point that I was, like, seriously injured, but I did take, like, I tried to overdose on ibuprofen, and so I took, like, a half bottle of ibuprofen, and miraculously it did nothing to me. And then after that, we have the 3rd time I went to the hospital, which was the last time. And when I got there, they were checking everything out. They were checking on the baby, and they were like, "Who's your OB?" And I was like, "I don't have one." And they were like, "What do you mean? You're, like, 4, almost 5 months pregnant." Or I think I was, like, in between 5 and 6 months pregnant. They were like, "What do you mean you don't have an OB?" And I was like, "I'm not allowed to go see one. And, like, up until now, everything's been fine, so I don't really need one right now." And I was truly convinced of that. And so he was with me at the hospital, and And the whole time, like, these nurses are, like, acting weird, and so I'm like, "Well, this is the weirdest hospital visit I've ever had in my life." And the nurses are just they're just acting weird, and they ask him to go down to the truck and go get my license because they needed my license for my information. And as soon as he leaves, they shut the door and they're like, there's like 3 nurses that surround me. And they're like, "Are you safe?" And I remember looking at them and I was genuinely confused. I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm safe." Like, I'm like, "What kind of question is that?" And they were like, "No, no, no. Does he hurt you?" Like, this one nurse was like, I'm gonna flat out say it. She was like, "Does he hurt you?" And I was like, and that was, I think that was the point that it started to set in, that I was like, is it that obvious to everybody else around me? And I think that was the first time that I started to realize I was being abused. Not just like he's cheating on me or like sometimes I'm in trouble and like he's a little toxic, but like it's no big deal. That was the first time that I was like, I am one of those relationships that everybody's like, I'd never do that. I'd know before it got that bad. You don't. And so like I didn't even answer her, but she knew that my answer was yes because of the way I just like looked at the floor. And I just like burst in tears. Well, at that point, he walks back in, and the hospital is like, we're going to admit you into a room because we need to like monitor you. And at this point, I still don't know what's going on. Well, the hospital's like already making like a plan for me to get out without me knowing. Like, I still have no idea that this is going on. And they had always kept somebody coming in and out of my room. So like I wasn't ever alone with him for very long. And keep in mind, like each time he went and like got me food or like anytime he left that hospital room, he also went and saw the girl he was cheating on me with. Wild work. But they kept like taking me back for tests or like going to do sonograms, like just random stuff. And I'm like, this is one of the weirdest things ever. And he had to leave he gave me some excuse, but he went to go see the girl he was cheating on me with. And when he said he was leaving, he's like, I'll only be gone for like a few hours, but I'll be back. And so my phone was plugged up to a charger and he was like, you are only allowed to answer this if I call you. Don't text or call anybody else. And he had like basically wrapped my phone around, there was like a little holder that like a charging port that they had given me to go bedside with me. Well, he had put it on the other side of the room and wrapped my phone with the cord like in a certain way to where if I touched it, he would know that I had touched it. So that way he could tell like if I had been on my phone or not. And so he leaves. The nurse comes in like right after he leaves, looks at my phone and the way he had it like all knotted up, and she was like, "Okay, who do we call that can come get you?" And I I haven't spoke to my mom in a while, but like my mom is probably the best person. So I don't even remember if it was me or the nurse that called my mom, but I want to say it was the nurse and like a social worker that had like together called my mom and been like, you need to come get her. And so my mom was like, yeah, yeah, I'll come get her. And they were like, no, you need to come get her. And before he realizes that she's gone, you need to get to her house, get everything you need from there, and like disappear. And so that's when we finally start like devising a plan, and he eventually like comes back to the hospital and they keep like taking me out for like tests and stuff while we're really just going to other hospital rooms that are open, and we're going in there and we're sitting down with like a social worker and several other nurses, and they're like putting together this plan to like sneak me out. There was like a back entrance to the hospital, and they were going to sneak me out of that entrance, and they were going to make sure that my mom stayed hidden so that like he didn't know that my mom showed up to come get me or that I had even called my mom. And like, so my mom gets there and they were like, we're going to take her back for a CT scan. And they were like, it takes quite a while. So she's going to be gone for quite a while. I don't remember how, but they had convinced him to let me have my phone during the CT scan so that I could take my phone out of the room. And they literally like rolled me down to this back entrance and then like helped me get into the car. And we went to the house we were living at and gathered all my stuff and tried to get me away from him. There was a few points after that like for some reason he always knew who I was around, and I never figured out like who was ratting me out, but anytime I was in public, he would try to like show up where I was at and come and find me. And there was a few times he would walk right up behind me and like try to talk to me. And I literally would like I would run because I was like because at this point I was fully aware I was being abused. And at this point, like the fear had set in. And so just the sight of him like made me want to pass out. I actually like saw a mugshot of him just from like a couple months ago. Same fear response. Like I started shaking, whole deal. And so after that, like, of course, like I got an OB and like went through the pregnancy. And I had really thought, like, there's no way I can keep this baby because, like, there's too much trauma associated with him. Like, I just can't. So I set up, like, a whole adoption process and got to the point where, like, they had drawn up the papers and all I needed to do was sign them. And it was, like, probably for 4 to 6 weeks before I had her, I decided to keep her. And she is almost 7 now. But when I went into labor with her, it was me and my best friend at the time. We were the only 2 people in the hospital room. I went into labor at like 5 or 6 a.m. And it was the most chill labor ever, honestly. We like went to IHOP and like ate food like right next to the hospital. And then we got to the hospital and I had her at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But it was just me and my friend in the hospital room. And they had put me, because not long before I had her, I went to a judge and got a protective order. I explained my whole story to him and he gave me a 10-year protective order. And he was like, it's like unheard of. Like you'll never hear of anybody getting like a protective order that lasts this long. But he was like, with everything you've told me, he was like, you deserve. And he was like, and if I could give you a 100-year protective order, I would. But he was like, 10 is the longest I'm legally allowed to grant you. And so I think that protective order is up in like 4 years, but I'm probably going to go get it renewed because it's for me and my daughter. He's not allowed near either one of us. And like if I ever get pulled over or something and they like run my license, that protective order pops up with it because they legally have to make sure that he's not with me. And so they always check my husband's ID, like if I get pulled over and he's like, at first he was like, what are they doing? And I was like, no, they legally have to make sure that you're not him. But yeah, I went into labor and somebody had figured out that I had gone into labor. I don't know who or how they figured out that I was in labor, but they did. And they called him and told him I was in labor. And he starts driving to different hospitals in the DFW area, trying to figure out which one I'm at. And he posted on his Snapchat that he was gonna find what hospital I was in and he was gonna kill me and the baby. And before that, like, I had gone out with friends a couple times and he had like broken beer bottles, tried to walk into places and was like, I'm gonna go like cut her stomach open, like absolutely wild behavior. Um, and so they put my room on lockdown. You had to have a password to get in. My best friend had to go down and see you face to face and confirm whether or not you were allowed in my hospital room. If somebody asked like for my name didn't come up in the system. Like they had me like completely secretly at that hospital. And then like even right after I had her, she came out and she looked just like him. And so for like the first 10 minutes, my best friend had to like convince me to hold her because I couldn't bring myself to do it, which is like, it sounds awful.
It's
But I got,
completely not uncommon. I need you to
Yeah.
know that. A
Yeah.
lot of women have been through that.
but yeah, I mean, her little tiny face, I mean, she looked just like him. And still sometimes like she makes some faces at me and I have to like take a moment because I'm like, whoa. It's not her fault and I don't ever take it out on her, but it definitely is. It wasn't easy right after I gave birth to her to even try to hold her. And luckily my OB was like totally understanding. She like knew what had happened and she gave me so much grace. She was awesome. She like, if I could have used her for all my kids, I so would have because she was amazing and she was so supportive. And I think she's the only reason that because like I found out like I was at like a 6 or 7 and I found out that he was trying to come find me and kill me. And so like I'm like in labor about to push and thinking that I might get murdered like mid-labor. But yeah, I mean, she was just incredible. She actually doesn't practice for the public anymore, but because she wanted to like spend more time with her family, but she was absolutely incredible. I loved her. And then kind of after that, there was a lot of instances where he who would try to find me, and then he went on this whole tangent when he figured out he, like, couldn't get me back. He went off on this whole deal where he was trying to how do I put this? He was trying to, like, spread his story in a way that either made me look crazy or made him look like the good guy. I still have a video in my phone saved to where he explains why I deserved to get beat. He would keep, like, pictures of, like, my bruises, and, like, he has a picture of me with 2 black eyes, and he would show that to other girls that he was trying to talk to and date and be like, "If you don't listen to me, you're gonna end up like her," which is a wild thing to tell a girl to try to get her to date him, but yeah, he went on this whole tangent and just tried to convince everybody that I was crazy. And honestly, for the most part, I think it worked. There's a lot of people in the rodeo community still that think that I'm nuts and that nothing I say is true, especially about that relationship, and that I'm just a crazy bitch and, like, I don't deserve the time of day. And once he had convinced, like, most of the masses that my story was just me being crazy, I kind of quit talking about it. And so, like, if there was ever somebody that was like, "Well, yeah, I'll listen," and, like, actually believed me, then I would tell it because I wasn't scared to tell the story. I just wasn't gonna waste my breath if nobody was gonna believe me. So I definitely wasn't silent about it. I just wasn't, like, advocating because I was like, there's no way that anybody's even gonna believe me anyway. But if somebody comes to me and asks me, I'll be honest. And I even at one point tried to talk to the girls that he was dating right after me. Well, I say right after me. He cheated on me with them and then went on to date them. And I even tried to, like, message them, be a girl's girl, and try to be like, hey, like, I just want to let you know, like, this is kind of the rundown of what happened with me. And I don't want to see that happen to you. So, like, if you can, like, get out while you still can before he gains too much control. And most of them told me I was crazy and to go F off, but, at least I tried. And I still get calls about him, like, to this day. And he actually just recently had another kid with a girl, and her sister-in-law, I think, called me and was like, "Hey, can we use your video on TikTok when you talked about some of the abuse with him?" She's like, "Can we use that video in court to like, as evidence that he is not safe?" And I was like, "Absolutely." I'm like, "Have at it." And they actually ended up not winning the case, and he has custody of the baby, which is really, really sad. So I hope that changes at some point. But because in the hospital, whenever they asked me who the father of my baby was, I was like, "He's not going on the birth certificate." And they were like, "Well, if you know who the father is, you have to tell us." And so I looked at this nurse dead in her face, and I was like, "Then I'm a whore and I have 3 boyfriends and I don't know who the dad is." And my best friend at the time, she cracked up. I mean, she could not keep a straight face. She was like, "That was the most, like, boss bitch thing I think you've ever done." But yeah, to this day, I was like, "Yeah, I told that lady that I was a whore and I had no idea who the father was." Because there is no way in hell that I was putting him on the birth certificate. And to
I'm
this day, he's
yeah.
not on the birth certificate. And my husband has actually now started the process of adopting her. Yeah, I mean, he's never on the birth. He's never ever going to be on the birth certificate because they were even like, "Well, you could get child support," and I was like, "I don't want child support from him." I was like, "I just don't want him involved at all." But my husband is actually starting the process of adopting our daughter, and she calls him dad, and he came into her life when she was a little under 2, and so he's, like, the only father figure she's ever known, and she loves him to death, and
I have goosebumps. I like a happy ending.
I didn't think I was gonna get one, so I'm a little shocked that we're here now, but
But it's out there. It really is. Because I think all
I'm
3
thank
of us girls have the same thing.
Yep.
We found it. But
I
sure,
remember you
yeah.
I remember you kind of posting about your whole experience, like when you first, like, I don't know if you had first gotten out, like had just gotten out of your relationship, but I do remember you posting about the abuse and stuff, and I was like, twinsies.
Mhm. Yeah, I can't lie. It took a while. I was terrified of him. He is a big reason why I don't go to Texas. Last time I saw him in Texas, in the open pen in front of God and everybody, I screamed, "Stay the fuck away from me, you fucking woman beater!" I haven't seen him since.
Was like totally scared that I was gonna run into him again one day, and I didn't figure out until like a little over 2 years into me and my husband's relationship. But he has a friend that like can do some digging on people and like figure out where they're at. I don't know how, and I'm not even gonna ask. But him and all his friends, they literally were like, no, 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 we keep tabs on him, like we know where he's at. And they were like, well, we're
I
not
lo-
gonna tell you, because you don't need to know that, but just know that we'll make sure you never run into him again. And I was like,
I lo-
and I also kind of was like, oh, you love me.
Yeah, no, my boyfriend's people banned my abusers from their bar that they own here in Stillwater, and I loved it. It was just such a seen feeling of people saying, "No, I'm creating a safe place for you."
Mm-hmm. And I think that's when I don't think I really started to heal until I got with my current husband, because he definitely took the steps to help me start healing. Because up until then, like I had just band-aided everything, and I went into like an extreme like party mode. Like I partied a lot, and I think I was just trying to get numb,
Mhm.
because like I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. So every weekend I would definitely go out and party, and I was definitely known for that for a while. And I acted like I was having fun, but I really was just trying to cover up everything I was really feeling. And when I actually had to like get a grip on it and like really face everything, I didn't really do that until me and my husband got together. And that was rough, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's a journey for sure. It's an absolute journey. Okay, I would love to keep chatting. I think I could sit here and talk all night. It's almost a good thing you didn't come here tonight because you would have gotten home really, really late. So we end every episode with this. Do you think pedophiles and sex offenders can be rehabilitated? If not, what do we do with them?
I would love to say that people can be rehabilitated, but at the same time, you can't trust that they could. So honestly, in my opinion, we just need to off them, all of them, or just keep them locked up for eternity. Send them underground. I don't care, as long as they never see the light of day again. Like I'd love to be like, yeah, totally, because I always want to be like that positive person that like you can change, but at the same time, I don't know if you're actually gonna change, and it's not worth risking somebody else's safety to see if you are safe enough to be let into the public again. So like, you don't deserve a second chance.